Today, let's talk about composition, particularly travel photos. I'm not going to talk about textbook jargon such as rule of third, leading lines that other photographers might have already shared with you, but rather some easy to implement solutions that can elevate your photos. If we haven't met, hi, I'm Belinda. I help photo enthusiasts like you take better travel photos and create dream memories. In my photo journey over the past 20 years, from my film SLR 24 years ago, my first DSLR 17 years ago, to my first mirrorless camera 6 years ago, I've used more than a dozen cameras. You can possibly master camera setting within one day, but very few photographers could claim they can master composition within one day, no matter whether they have talent or not. Your photograph, or whatever you see through your lens, is essentially a reflection of who you are. It's important to know the camera settings, but that's only the starting point. You need to hone your composition skills in order to capture the unique photos that are a reflection of the unique you. The good news is, just like the basic camera skills, your photography eye or composition skills can be trained. Today, let me share with you the 6 composition tips I use most often in my travel photos. Try them out and see how they can improve your own travel photos in your next trip. Tip number 1, move your camera angle and positions. If you don't see the beauty, you won't capture it, right? If you typically take photos at eye level in your standing position, next time try something different. You see, in front of this lake, if you hold your camera at eye level in standing position, this is what you see, a blank, open scene. But if you lower yourself and angle the camera up a little bit, and this is what you see. The first image has no dominant subject and looks boring. It's like a book or a movie without main character. The second picture has a clear subject and a background. Not only that, it reminds us that beauty is everywhere, as long as you have an open eye and open mind. Photographing people is exactly the same. Instead of taking your photos at eye level in standing position, lower yourself and angle up, or lift your camera up and angle down. You'll be surprised how many new and interesting things that may present in front of your lenses if you repeat this exercise. Before you move on to the next few composition tips I'm going to share with you, practice this first tip as much as you can. I guarantee you will see a whole new world when you get into the habit of observing people, things, moments, and environments from different angles and positions. And the bottom line is, this technique is really the easiest, yet the most impactful one to improve your composition. If you like to photograph landscape and cityscape, it's exactly the same. If you're in the nature, try to find a high vantage point. For example, climb up on a hill. And if you are in the city, perhaps go to a rooftop. If you travel with kids, take the Ferris wheel. You don't want to know how many times I took the Ferris wheel with my kids last summer just in order to photograph the cityscape from high above. Tip number 2, add foreground. Adding foreground to a photograph can improve your composition in 3 ways. First, incorporating foreground elements to a photo creates layers within the frame and adds depth and dimension. Why do we want to create depth, you may ask? Well, we live in a 3D world and photography is a 2D art. By establishing a sense of distance between foreground, midground, and background, you create more 3D in your 2D art and make your photo more visually captivating and dynamic. You can add foreground by holding your camera close to something. Whether it's the ground, the wall, the fence, the railing, the bush, the grass, the flower, the food, or even a person, the option is endless. Whatever within your arm reach or inches away from your camera could be your foreground. You can adopt the same approach for both portrait and landscape, for both indoors and outdoor scenarios. Just make sure your foreground is not going to take too much a big proportion and throw your photos out of balance. The second benefit of adding foreground is framing. The foreground elements can structure your composition, leading to a more balanced and aesthetically pleasing image. Look, Instead of photographing an architectural landmark directly, I put my camera behind a fenced opening to frame the building, giving the photo a balanced border. Here are more examples. The frame doesn't have to be in the shape of square, rectangle, circle, or oval covering all four sides of your photo. They can be side frames covering two opposite sides of your photo, and they can be in tangible shapes or abstract forms. They all serve the same purpose to balance your composition, which I'm going to share more detail later on. The third benefit of adding foreground elements is to add context and scale, emphasizing the environment and the story setting of a photo. Whether it's the color of bushes or the silhouette of tree branches or some textured surface, foreground elements anchor the scene and provide additional information of the timing and location of a photo, giving your viewer some point of reference. Tip number 3, balance your photo content. A well-balanced photo is typically more visually appealing. But what is a balanced photo, you may ask? It's like talking about work-life balance. Some people might think a 10-hour work day plus 6 hours sleep is well-balanced, while others might think this is not acceptable. Here are some examples. Symmetry is unarguably balanced, right? I have adopted symmetry in a lot of my landscape photos by incorporating reflection. When you take portrait or travel photos, you can certainly adopt the same concept. Symmetry can be top-down symmetry or left-right symmetry. For photos with subject or background of architecture or things with many lines and patterns, symmetry can help you create a more balanced composition. Rule of third is what people talk about all the time. I know I said I'm not going to talk about it, but here is why. I actually never intentionally pursued rule of third, but sometimes in certain situations you just have to put your subject a little bit off the center in order to achieve balance. My rule of thumb is to put the subject in the opposite side of the photo where there's heavy content. If the content is heavy on the left, I put my subject on the right, and vice versa. If the content is too heavy on the right, I put my subject on the left. It's that easy. Another quick look is to see where the subject is facing. If the person is looking to the left, I leave more space on the left. If the person is looking to the right, I leave more space on the right. You give your viewers the chance to follow your subject and to explore the world where your subject is looking at. Your goal is to achieve balance in your photo. I think it's a little misleading to blindly follow the textbook tips of rule of third. If you have to adopt symmetry to achieve that balance, there's no need you put your subject in the position of 1/3. If you have to put your subject in the corner of a photo to achieve that balance, whether it's 1/4, a fifth of the position, by all means do it. It's all about experiment with perspectives. Remember, your photos are a reflection of the unique you. You can always learn the rules and break the rules. Tip number 4, simplify your photos. I am a big fan of less is more, and I have repeated this tip in many photo talks, videos, and blog posts in the past. Simplifying photos have many different approaches, whether to reduce elements, colors, unwanted subjects, or clutter in the background. Your goal is to achieve a simpler yet stronger composition. The simpler your photo, the easier it is for your viewers to understand and resonate with your story. 2 very easy ways to achieve simple composition. One is to do close-up. The other one is to fill your frame with similar colors and patterns. You may be surprised to see how easy it is to achieve simple composition. Sometimes all it takes is to walk up a few steps if you use a prime lens, or zoom in if you use a zoom lens, or do both. Simplifying photos can also be achieved by harmonizing colors. If your subject is your family and friends, be intentional about the colors of the clothes. Have your subject wear neutral or solid colors so you can avoid adding additional colors to an already complicated scene. Of course, you can simplify your photo colors in post-processing. For years, I have adopted muted color tones in my travel photos so I can further achieve simplicity. You can check out my Lifescape AI Adobe Lightroom presets for more details. I'll leave you a link below. If you're interested in knowing how I retouch my travel photos in general, leave me a comment below. Tip number 5, be intentional about size and distance. Most amateur photographers photograph your family and friends with full body composition in a travel photo. Nothing's wrong with that. You want to show your people subject as well as the location in your photo frame. However, a common problem in a full body capture is that sometimes a foot, a shoe, a hand, or some fingers are accidentally cut out of the photo frame. You see, sometimes a small detail like this can make or break a photo. If you want to capture full body composition of your people subject, try to include all feet, shoes, hands, fingers. Of course, this is only the guideline. If it is your intention to cut out certain part of the subject to tell your story, by all means do it. Now let's do 2 exercises and try different composition. First, try to photograph big scene with tiny people by distancing yourself from your people subject. This is particularly useful if you photograph in the nature. You want to showcase the grand size and the magnificence of a scene. You want to use your tiny people in the frame as a reference point to showcase the size difference. Here's an example. The mountain ranges are endless and gorgeous. Taking a faraway shot with tiny people in the frame effectively demonstrates the size of your environment. Now, here's the opposite exercise. Do close-up, which we just talked about. We know doing close-up with shallow depth of field can give you cleaner background and better composition. This is especially true in an urban scene with crowded, busy background. Zooming and walk up closer can effectively declutter your background and instantly elevate your photos. In a nutshell, you don't have to always do the classic full body travel photos. Experiment with different sizes and distances to achieve a strong composition. If you enjoyed this video so far, like and subscribe or share it with whoever who might need it. Tip number 6, focus on the moment and story. Most of the composition tips I have shared so far have something to do with the visual attractiveness of your travel photo. However, if you're into candid style and want to document your real travel experience and the reality of your everyday life, you probably don't have the luxury of always photographing in the perfect location where you'll find symmetrical shapes, beautiful natural frames, lines and patterns, or simple colors. Instead, you pay more attention to the behavior of your subjects or the interaction between different subjects or between the subjects and their environments. A composition I use very often in my travel photo is to have my people subject looking out to a beautiful scene. And oftentimes, I focus on the scene and blur out the people subject as a foreground. Your goal is to invite your audience to enjoy your travel story. You want your audience to have an immersive travel experience with you. There you go, 6 easy to implement composition tips that can elevate your travel photos. If you'd like to learn more composition tips or how to take better travel photos in general, check out my Document Happiness Photography course, where I've shared tips across the entire photo creation process and shared topics from light, camera settings, exposure, focus, composition, post-processing techniques. My goal is to help you take beautiful photos for your family and friends anytime, anywhere on your photo journey. Last but not least, composition tips are just guidelines. There's no need to treat them as rules. As I mentioned earlier, your photograph is essentially a reflection of who you are. To a certain extent, improving photography is a way of self-growth and exploration. The more you practice these composition tips, the more you are able to find extraordinary from the ordinary. And the more you are able to see the best out of something, somewhere, or someone. And ultimately, the beauty of your life overall. Thanks for watching. If you haven't yet, make sure to check out this video where I've shared my photo journey over the past 20 years and some of my top tips to improve your travel photos.